The biggest surprise was the actual responses for people within the group. When I would post something, I'm thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. I'm posting my feelings and what I'm going through. All of a sudden, there's 5 or 10 guys responding back with help and support. And I didn't feel alone. In my whole life, I felt alone. Suddenly, I did not feel alone.
What's going on, everybody? This is your friend Chris here, your brother in the struggle, and I am here with somebody who is coming to us directly from the Porn Reboot implementation group. I'm here with my friend John. How are you doing today, sir?
Really good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making the time and taking the time. Just wanted to ask you a couple questions about your experience in the group thus far. First of all, how did you find out about the group?
Years of research, and I've listened to JK on other platforms for a long time until I actually discovered this actual process here. So online platforms.
Okay, cool. So what was the moment like where you knew for sure that you wanted to join this group?
Just a feeling of helplessness. I can't stop. I have a problem. I have an issue. I'm not in control. I hate this. I crawl over glass to stop, and I can't stop. I've tried everything I can possibly think of with no success.
And what were some of those behaviors that you were struggling with?
Masturbation specifically. Yeah, extreme. And I could not stop.
I mean, it's a very, very common tale, and I'm really, really happy that you ended up finding this group. What was it like when you first joined the group?
When I first joined the group, I had uncertainty and confusion because I did not understand how to use some of the tools. For example, Facebook. I'd never been on Facebook before, and I thought, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? I got to have a Facebook account. Now I got to learn how to maneuver. I was very uncertain and very uncomfortable, and I was a little afraid because I feel very vulnerable. I'm asking for help, and I don't know how to do these things.
And what was it like when you were asking for help?
It was fantastic. So there was a group of people called the Reboot Heroes, and you reach out to them and they get back to you and they help you. And the help is immediate and they're always there to help you. And I felt embarrassed because I was asking for help 4 or 5 times a day. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I log on? How do I send a message? What does this mean? Or I asked the same question 2 or 3 times. And I felt so stupid. And yet they were so patient, so helpful, so caring. And they just wanted to make sure I was understanding it. And then after a while, the learning curve worked and I understand it and I can fly all over the place. So I felt really happy because I had the support. I had the support I needed. And I didn't know anything how to do it. And it was all there.
That's awesome, John. I'm really encouraged to hear that. What has your experience been like in the group so far?
The experience has been higher than my expectations. What were my expectations? I just wanted to stop. And it was enough. To me, this was going to be another thing I was going to try of all the hundreds of things I've tried. But the difference was this was a process. And I never had a process before. This wasn't a book you read. This wasn't a therapist you see for 10 sessions. This was a whole process. And this wasn't a do it now or else. This was a process, meaning, yeah, you might slip, you might fall down, but if you keep getting back up and stay with this team, we're going to get you through it. And that was really exciting for me because I thought for the first time in my life, this can work because the tools are there and the people in the program have all gone through it like I have. I'm not alone.
Right.
I enjoyed that. The biggest surprise was the actual responses for people within the group. When I would post something, I'm thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. I'm posting my feelings and what I'm going through. All of a sudden, there's 5 or 10 guys responding back with help and support. And I didn't feel alone. In my whole life, I felt alone. Suddenly, I did not feel alone.
So the community aspect has proven to be really important.
Community is fantastic, as well as the modules, which keeps you focused on a program, as well as the therapists that we have that you can join in and listen to, which I listen to all the time and I relate to quite a bit. And by the way, I thought that was going to be kind of hokey, but then after I listened in and people would talk about what they're going through, I'd think, well, I'm going through the same thing. Geez, this is fantastic. This is really amazing. And then I realized suddenly that it was okay to be vulnerable. Everybody was there to help each other. There was not somebody saying there's something wrong with you. We're all struggling to be better people. And I truly believe you're in this program because you want to be a better person, or you wouldn't be in this program. So everybody has a common goal and they can't get past this horrible addiction that so many men struggle with, many in silently, silence until they die. And it's like you're a pioneer. And I feel like that because we're pioneers in a program, and there really aren't any programs like this. There are no programs like this. If there is, that's great, but I have never experienced anything like this on so many different levels.
I
That's kind of the
completely
neat thing. It's on so many different levels. It's not one thing, it's a whole bunch of things. And we're going to suit this to what works best for you. We're going to help you understand what works best for you. Ask for help, and we'll tailor this so it works best for your needs. It's just like a gift. It's a miracle.
That's really, really amazing to hear and really, really encouraging. And I love how you said that, yeah, we're going to tailor it to your particular needs. We have the concept known as reboot capital. So once, we get a better grip on our urges and our unhealthy behaviors, we get to intentionally focus on different aspects of reboot capital. So for example, we have our relationships capital, we have our financial reboot capital, we have our spiritual capital, our emotional regulation capital. It's just we go about certain aspects of our lives that we want to really, really hone in on and focus on for a particular season and just let that be our mission. So I'm curious, like within your time in the group so far, what aspects of Reboot Capital have you invested in?
Well, that's a very good question. And once again, it's tailored for where you're at. I know there's a dating capital investment. I'm married, so I'm not actively involved in that. But I'll tell you what, when you look at your emotions, you look at your childhood scars and your wounds, that you suddenly, that's a huge part. You see, I always thought, well, all I needed was a straitjacket for about 2 months and I'll be cured. It doesn't work like that. It's a whole bunch of stuff underneath it. And I didn't understand that. So what I'm focusing on now is the emotional side of things, utilizing the therapists and the doctors that are available. And that's been fantastic for me, as well as the community. I don't feel alone.
Yeah.
I feel
No, that's
perfect.
great. That's
I
really,
have
really
friends
great.
in this group, and I feel like I have people I care about, and they care about me.
100%. That's really, really encouraging to hear. So, as far as you had mentioned some of the group coaching calls, can you talk a little bit more about that?
There's so many different coaching calls, whether it be approaches like to relapse prevention. You've got your modules, then you've got the coaching calls where you can focus in on different doctors for specific elements that you want to be involved in, and you can even submit your own questions and get feedback back that way. Then you've got coaching calls where you're actually doing a class, for example, breaking the cycle, and we're studying a book and we're going through each chapter as a group. So those are all coaching calls, and it's like being back in university. It's like being back in school. I'm getting all these different classes, and it's tremendous. And that I that is the most important part of this. Actually, it's all important, and that's the other thing. It all fits together. It's not this or that. It's all fitting together.
I'm curious as to which coaching call you've gotten the most out of so far.
Breaking the cycle.
Oh.
I'm not just saying that. I really, because I understand, I'm going through that and I'm using the steps like dialoguing. It's something about dialoguing. And I've never done that before. And even though I read the book we're studying, I never actually tried it. And now all of a sudden I'm trying it and it's like different. And so the coaching calls helps me to, in that specific example, to take these tools and now apply them to my life in real life situations. And I wouldn't have the motivation to do it. I could just read that book and put it down and go, oh yeah, that's another book. Put it on the stack of the other 30 books. No, this is actually applying the tools. So that's one example. And I enjoy that. I tremendously do. I also like that people can get involved and ask questions directly, and the whole group gets involved in these questions. It's not a question and answer. Everybody helps each other through this. So that's the
Yeah.
other part of coaching calls I truly enjoy.
That's really, really great, man. That's really, really great. And I'm glad you get a lot out of the calls, and I'm glad you get a lot out of the breaking the cycle call. It means a lot to me, and it certainly means a lot to us, those who join. And yeah, I'm just really, really glad that you're continuing to get a lot out of it. You mentioned dialoguing. For someone that might not know what that tool is, what it looks like, how it works, could you kind of walk through how you do it and describe it a little bit?
Well, that's a very good question because that's the one I struggled on the most, dialoguing. It's like you're trying to understand a sub personality one has that they get involved in. And maybe a good way to communicate it is many men have compartmentalized living. you have a business person, they might have a family part of them, they might have their husband part, but there's other parts of us that are also compartmentalized. Someone who gets involved and you're sitting there looking at something you really don't want to be looking at for hours and hours, and then you hate yourself when you're done. And there's a whole process that goes on. There's a personality. It's like, it's not me, but it is me. And so suddenly it's identifying those personalities. It's learning how to not only embrace them, but be in control of yourself. So rather than them controlling me, I'm starting to be in control. And I say them because it's an element of our brain that we've tweaked on. And I didn't understand how all these things are so affected. But when I did the dialoguing, suddenly I started to understand how they're all interrelated. For example, the chemicals that go on in our brains, like dopamine, and when we're masturbating, and what we're really seeking is a chemical high. Well, what's that about? Well, we're trying to satisfy this addict part of our brain who wants to feel good. Well, what is that part that wants to feel good? Well, that's the that goes in and makes you do things to get this. And it's so convoluted and interrelated, but by dialoguing, suddenly you're involved in that aspect of your brain. And at first I felt strange doing it. Like, I'm thinking, oh boy, I feel like I'm going to be one of those people walking down the street talking to someone. But then I realized that this is very, very healthy. And when we do that, suddenly we become in control. You know, you've heard of this story, the tail wagging the dog. Suddenly I think the dog wagging the tail. Up till now, it's been the tail wagging the dog. And I've never had that ability to even understand it. And it works. Now, that's the other side of this thing. The program is fantastic. They have phenomenal tools, but do what they tell you to do. If anybody said, what would be one piece of advice? I'd say, do what they ask you to do, because it works. It might feel stupid, having a dialogue with yourself. These are proven tools that work. Just trust, have faith.
Absolutely.
And try it.
I completely hear where you're coming from, and I have been there myself. So I can attest to everything that you're saying right now is right on the money. And I don't know if you're half man, half ninja, because I absolutely was going to ask you that question. Essentially, what piece of advice? But this is more than just like, kind of offering someone advice, because you and I both know how common of an issue this is and how little it's talked about and how even littler it's addressed, right? So for somebody that might be, like you mentioned earlier, kind of struggling in silence in the way that you and I have, is there anything that you would tell that person, knowing what you know now, having learned the tools that you've learned and having experienced what you've experienced in the program?
That's a great question, because think of the amount of men who struggle in silence their entire life, and then they die. They might die very old men, but they've carried this with them their entire life. All those years wasted. Don't do it. There's an opportunity here to change your life, and it doesn't matter what age you are. You could be 20 years old or 90 years old. If you're dealing with this issue now, you're going to suddenly be a whole person. And that's a whole new experience to me, because I've always just lived my life with guilt and shame and worried, looking over my shoulder. And I don't want anybody to really know who I am inside. Now, all of a sudden, I can start to say, this is who I am. I'm okay with it. I'm a whole person. This is a great opportunity. It's a program. It's a process. It's not a course. It's not a book. It's not a tape. It's not a video program. It's a whole process. And also be patient, because it's not going to be a silver bullet. You're not going to do this and a week later you're better, or a month or 2 months. It's a process, and understand that. And once you understand that, you truly can be free. You can truly be complete. It's free or being complete. These are new experiences for me. Doesn't mean it's easy. And I think this is the hardest thing in the world any man is ever going to do. Any man, unless of course you don't have 2 arms and you're blind.
Yeah, that would help, right? So one last question I wanted to ask you was simply, would you recommend this program to somebody?
I would truly recommend this program to everybody. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what economic class you are. It doesn't matter what this color of your skin is or what country you're from, because it's applicable to all men. And men that struggle with this problem, we have a common bond. This eradicates anything to do with social classes, countries, age. It completely eradicates it. It's something that we carry with us. And most men are afraid to even talk about it. Imagine being able to talk about this, something I've kept hidden my entire life. I would recommend this program, and don't waste a second. Get in it now. Stop now. I mean, get involved now, because the results are there and you will win. This is a program that, I hate the words guaranteed, but I don't see how you can fail as long as you follow the program. It works.
John, thank you so much for your time, your insights, and all the best to you, man.